I'm Matthew Detweiler.
And I'm Caleb Ivanka, and this is
Lions Awaken. So Caleb and I are both third-year students here at Morningstar University, and today we're making our first video of hopefully many, of which we will be discussing some of the major controversial issues that are plaguing our times. And our goal is to inform Christians with the truth regarding these controversial issues and to awaken the lion, the courage within them, so that they can speak the truth boldly in the midst of this culture war that we are facing. And so let's talk about the election today. It's less than 2 weeks away, and it will determine the course of this country for the next 4 years. And Caleb, you've studied some world history, and you love studying politics.
Yep.
So what can you tell us today, us Christians, how to vote? What are some of the things that we should keep in mind when to decide who to vote for?
Great question, Matt. I think in a way, Jesus actually tells us how to vote. In Matthew chapter 7, verse 16 to 20, he teaches us how to judge the false prophets from the real ones, and he does so by comparing them to trees. And he says you can judge a tree by the fruit that it produces. So a good tree will produce good fruit, and a bad tree will produce bad fruit.
Right.
And so I think the same applies when judging politicians. We can judge them by their fruit. We can judge them by their policies. And so we as Christians need to see, okay, which candidates' policies line up with scripture and biblical values, and then which, obviously not perfectly, but to the best of the human ability, and then which candidates' policies oppose biblical values and scripture. And so with that being said, I think there are three main issues which we as Christians need to judge a candidate's policy on and then vote accordingly. And the first one being, it's the most obvious one, is abortion.
Yeah,
we all know that that's straight up murder. There's no way around it. It's an evil practice. And so the Bible's very clear on that thou shalt not murder. And so we need to look at a candidate's policy who protects life, who is openly pro-life, who passes laws to protect the most vulnerable people in our society, and that's the unborn. And so that's the biggest thing we need to weigh on the scales as Christians. The second issue is that of Israel. Again, the Bible is very clear on this. In Genesis chapter 12, verse 3, it says, God says, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. And so when we're looking at a candidate and their policies, we need to see, okay, which candidate supports, recognizes, and blesses the state of Israel and the Jewish people. And then we need to get behind that person because we want our nation to be blessed as well.
Exactly.
And so the third issue is that of freedom. And I'm talking about freedom in all areas, freedom of speech, freedom to bear arms, economic freedom, and the most important to us as Christians is that of religious freedom. Yep. Do you guys want a government that will regulate what you can and cannot say in the pulpits and the churches and on the streets? Do you want a government who regulates the gospel? Or do you want a government who will protect your right to freely express your faith, to freely proclaim the gospel in its entirety? And so it really boils down to, do we want more government control or do we want more individual freedom? Because we can't have both. You have to pick and choose which one. And so I think the biggest obstacle the American church is going to have to face is whether or not we're going to vote in personality or we're going to vote in policies when looking at each candidate. And so, at the end of the day, personality doesn't affect people's livelihoods, their businesses, their families, or their rights. Policies affect all those things. And so that's really what I would say to Christians regarding this next election. So, yeah.
Well, there you have it, folks. That will wrap it up for today's video. And stay tuned for next week's video where Caleb and I will discuss on how the final presidential debate went. God bless you, and God bless America.